Eleanor Hart had spent the better part of 25 years tending to people who would never once think to tend to her. And on the morning the Duke came home, she was doing it again, kneeling on the cold flags of the still room, grinding dried chamomile to powder with a pestle that had worn a callus into the heel of her right hand. The summer heat had not yet reached this north corner of Renfield Hall. Here the air still smelled of last winter's beeswax and the green bite of bruised herbs, and the only sound was the chime of stone on stone and the far-off complaint of a stable door swinging on a hinge no one had thought to oil. She did not hear the carriage. She heard, instead, Mrs. Pruitt. "He is come." The housekeeper filled the low doorway, her keys ringing against her hip, her face the particular grey of a woman who has had 3 hours' warning to do the work of 3 days. "The Duke, on the Bath Road this past quarter hour, and her Grace not even told yet, and the blue rooms with their holland covers still on, and you, Miss Hart, for mercy's sake, look at your apron." Eleanor looked at her apron. It bore the morning's history in green and brown, chamomile, a smear of goose-grease salve, the rusty ghost of the beef tea she had coaxed past the dowager's lips at dawn. "I shall change it," she said, and rose, pressing the small of her back where it had learned to ache before she was 20. "You shall change it now," Mrs. Pruitt's voice cracked like a dry twig. "And then you shall go up to her Grace, because she will not be calmed by me, and she will not be calmed by the doctor, and she will be calmed by you, the way she always is, because the good Lord made you patient, and made the rest of us only tired." It was, Eleanor thought, as near to a compliment as Mrs. Pruitt had paid her in 4 years. She tucked it away, the way she tucked away everything, folded small, kept dry, never quite spent, and went up the back stair with the powder still ghosting her fingers. The Dowager Duchess of Renfield was sitting bolt upright against her pillows, glaring at the window as though the summer itself had insulted her. "They have let the roses go to ruin," she announced, before Eleanor had shut the door. "Look at them. Blousy. Gross. Like dowagers who have given up. Open the casement, child. I am roasting in here. And tell me at once whether it is true that my grandson has finally remembered he possesses a grandmother." "It is true." Eleanor crossed the warm carpet, unlatched the casement, and let in the smell of the gardens, hot box hedge, cut grass drying to hay on the lower lawn, a thread of stable-yard smoke that someone's shawl would carry indoors by evening. "He is on the Bath Road. You will see him within the hour." The old woman's hands moved on the counterpane. They were beautiful hands still, for all their knots, long, ringed, restless. They had held this house together through 2 bad harvests and 1 worse scandal. And now they plucked at the hem of the sheet like a girl waiting to be asked to dance. "Within the hour," she repeated. "Then I want the lavender wrapper, not this funeral thing. And my cap with the good lace, and you will sit me up properly, Eleanor. None of your propping. He is not to see me sunk." She caught Eleanor's wrist as Eleanor reached for the wrapper, and her grip, thin as it was, had not forgotten how to command. "He will not look at me as you look at me. He will look, and he will see how far down I have come, and he will be kind, which is worse. Do you understand me?" "I understand that you have ordered the lavender wrapper," Eleanor said gently, "and that you will have it. Lift your arm for me." "Insolent creature!" But the dowager lifted her arm, and something in the seamed old face eased, the way it always eased when Eleanor took the weight of a thing from her without being asked. "What should I do without you? What in heaven's name should any of us do without you?" "Mind, I shall never tell you so when I am well. It would go to your head, and you would marry a curate." There is very little danger of that. Eleanor drew the lavender silk over the frail shoulders, settled the good lace, and smoothed the white hair back from a brow that had once, a portrait downstairs insisted, been the most admired in 3 counties. Hold still. You are not to greet a duke with your cap over one ear like a tavern sign. The dowager laughed, a dry, delighted rasp, and the laugh turned to a cough, and the cough went on a beat too long, and Eleanor's hands were already there, one at the narrow back, one bringing the cordial glass to the cracked lips, before the old woman had finished deciding to be frightened. This was the shape of Eleanor's days. She had learnt it the way other women learned the pianoforte, by repetition, until the fingers knew the music before the mind did. There, she murmured, when it had passed. There, you are well. You are only cross, which is a sign of health. I am old, said the dowager, with sudden, naked clarity, and you are 25, and you spend your one life sitting in a sick room that smells of me. Her eyes, black still, sharp still, found Eleanor's face and held it. It is not right. I have said so to no one, but I shall say it to him. I have decided. I have nothing left to lose by saying things, and a great deal of pleasure to be got from it. Eleanor did not ask what she meant. She had learned that the dowager's resolutions, like summer storms, were best waited out rather than answered. She was still waiting it out, an hour later, when the door of the long drawing-room opened, and the Duke of Renfield walked into the only afternoon Eleanor would ever afterward be able to remember minute by minute. She had expected. She did not know what she had expected. A portrait come to life, perhaps, the cold, glittering creature of the dowager's prouder stories, the grandson who answered letters with bank drafts and never with himself. She had expected to be invisible, which was a thing she was good at, and had arranged herself accordingly at the window with the dowager's work-basket, near enough to be of use and far enough to be furniture. What walked in was a young man, younger than the legend, certainly not above 27, who filled the doorway the way weather fills a valley, shoulders that strained the dark blue of a coat cut for a slighter idea of him, dust still grey on his boots from the road he had plainly not stopped to leave behind him. He had his grandmother's black eyes. He crossed the room to her without a glance for anyone else in it, and went down on one knee beside her chair as though the kneeling cost him nothing, and took both her restless hands into his 2 large ones and stilled them. "Grandmother," he said. That was all, one word, low, in a voice that had clearly meant to be even, and had not entirely managed it. Eleanor, who made her living by reading what people would not say, heard the whole of it, the guilt, the fear, the 4 years of bank drafts standing between him and this room, pressed flat under that single steady syllable. Alaric, the dowager's chin came up. You look like your father. It is very tiresome of you. Sit where I can see you and do not dare to be tender. I have had a great deal of tenderness this morning, and it has quite worn me out. He sat. He looked at her. Really looked. The way Eleanor had warned herself he would, taking in the sunken temples, the lavender wrapper that had been chosen to disguise what it could not, and Eleanor watched a muscle move once in his jaw and then go still, mastered. You have not been writing to me, he said. I have been writing to you every week these 4 years. You have been writing to me about the roses, and the curate, and Lady Selcombe's appalling new barouche. You have not been writing to me about the doctor coming twice in a se'nnight, or about the cordial, or about... He stopped. His glance went, for the first time, past his grandmother's shoulder, and found Eleanor at the window, the work-basket in her lap, a half-darned stocking caught on the needle. She had been looked at before. She had been looked through more often. This was neither. This was the look of a man taking sudden, unwilling inventory of a fact he had not known he was missing, and it lasted perhaps 2 seconds, and Eleanor felt it go over her like the first cold of a marble hall in winter. Who is this? He said. Not unkindly, but not as one asks after a piece of furniture either. That, said the dowager, with enormous satisfaction, is Miss Hart, who has kept me alive and on this earth and tolerably good-tempered for 4 years. while you, my dear, were keeping whites in funds. Eleanor, come and be looked at. He has earned the right to be ashamed of himself, and I should like to watch. Your Grace flatters me. Eleanor set down the stocking, rose, and crossed the room with the work-basket still half in her thoughts, and made her curtsy at the proper depth, neither an inch more nor less. Your Grace, you will be tired from the road. I shall have them bring something cool to the small parlour, and leave you with her Grace. You will do no such thing, the Dowager said. You will stay. I want you both where I can see you. I am too old to enjoy my pleasures one at a time. The Duke had got to his feet when Eleanor rose, automatically, the way a certain sort of man does, before he has decided whether the woman is worth the courtesy. Now he stood looking down at her, for he was ahead and more above her, and Eleanor had the disconcerting experience of being studied by someone who did it as carefully as she did. Miss Hart, he said, how long has my grandmother been as you found her this morning? The question was so exactly the right one, so precisely the question no one in the house had asked her in 4 years, because no one in the house had wished to know the answer, that for a moment Eleanor could not speak. Then her training closed over the lapse like water over a dropped stone. Her Grace has good days and indifferent ones. Your Grace. Today is a good one. She has been cross since dawn, which I have learned to read as a victory. Something crossed his face, not a smile. He did not seem a man much given to them, but the place a smile might have stood in another man. And the indifferent ones are managed. By you. By the household, Eleanor said. By you, he said again, quietly, and it was not a question this time, and Eleanor understood that he had already been to the kitchens, or the stables, or had simply read the room the way she read rooms, the worn place on the carpet beside the Dowager's chair, exactly the size and shape of where she knelt, the cordial glass to hand, the half-darned stocking that was the Dowager's own. He had been in the house a quarter of an hour, and he had seen her. It was the most unsettling thing that had happened to Eleanor in a year of unsettling mornings, and she found she resented it in the small private place where she kept the things she was not allowed to feel. Sit, both of you, commanded the Dowager, and let me look at the pair of you standing about being civil. It is better than a play. Alaric. Ring for the cool thing Eleanor mentioned. I should like it too. I am not yet furniture either. And then, you may tell me why you have come home in July with no warning and no valet to speak of, and that face on you. Because I have known that face since you were 6 years old, and it has never once meant good news for somebody. The Duke crossed to the bell pull. Eleanor watched his back, the breadth of it, the dust, the way he paused with his hand on the embroidered cord as though gathering something, and felt the first thin drought of a change she could not name, the way the staff at Renfield could feel a storm 3 hours off the sea. I came home, he said, still facing the wall, because Dr. Holloway wrote to me. Not grandmother's doctor. Holloway, mine, the one I pay to tell me the truth when everyone else is being kind. He turned. His black eyes went, deliberately, not to the Dowager, but to Eleanor. He had it from the apothecary in Wells, who had it from your own letters ordering the cordials, Miss Hart. You sign them in a very clear hand. You order a great deal more of certain things than a household admits to needing, and you order them yourself, and you pay for some of them, I find, out of your own wages. The room went very quiet. Down on the lower lawn a scythe whispered through grass. Somewhere a wood pigeon turned its 3 soft notes over and over. Eleanor's hands had gone cold. Your Grace, how much of your wages? The Duke said. That is not how much. It is a small economy I am glad to make, Eleanor said, with a calm she dug up from somewhere far below her, and it is not a fit subject before her Grace, who is not to be worried, and who will worry, because she is contrary by nature, and worries about exactly the things one tells her not to. She turned to the Dowager and made her voice light, the voice that had carried 1,000 bad mornings. There, now you know my dreadful secret. I have been buying you the good French cordial, instead of the parish stuff, and charging it to my own vanity, because I will not have it said that a Duchess of Renfield was dosed like a poorhouse. It is pride, your grace, nothing more. You of all people must understand pride. The Dowager was not looking at her. The Dowager was looking at her grandson, and there were tears standing bright and unspilled in the sharp old eyes, and her ringed hands had gone still at last upon the counterpane. 4 years, she said to him, very low. 4 years, Alaric, and I never told you, because she never told me. And I am a selfish old woman who took it because it was offered, the way I have taken everything that was ever offered me, all my life. Her voice shook and steadied. I told you I had decided to say things. Here is the first of them. That girl has poured out her one and only life into this house drop by drop, and not one soul under this roof, least of all I, has ever once asked what she might want poured back. You wish to know why I sent for no one and complained to no one. It is because I could not bear for it to stop. Do you hear me? I am that low. Grandmother, I am not finished. The old woman's chin trembled and held. You have spent 4 years buying your way out of this room with bank drafts. Very well. You are home now. You will look at her. Yes, at her. Do not look at me. I am an old ruin and beyond mending. You will look at her, and you will tell me, before I am past hearing it, that someone in this family has at last had the decency to think of Eleanor Hart's happiness instead of their own. Eleanor stood in the middle of the warm, bright room, with her cold hands knotted in her stained apron, and wished, with a violence that frightened her, that the summer soft floor would open and take her down to the cool dark of the still room, where she knew what she was for. She was the one who managed scenes. She was never, ever the scene. 4 years she had been the steady hands at the edge of other people's storms, and now both of them were looking at her, the dying legend, and the dusty stranger with his grandmother's eyes, and she had no task to reach for, no glass to bring, no back to support, but her own, and her own had ached since before she was 20. Your Grace, she managed, you must not distress yourself on my, Miss Hart. The Duke's voice cut across hers, not loud, but with the flat certainty of a man who has just that moment finished deciding something and finds the decision will not be argued out of him. He had not moved from the bell pull. He stood with the late sun coming gold across the dust on his shoulders, and he looked at her as though she were the only fixed point in a tilting room. My grandmother is right. She is right about all of it, which is a thing I am not accustomed to admitting, and I find I do not enjoy it. He drew a breath. You have spent your life caring for everyone in this house who could pay you in nothing but trouble. I have watched you do it for a quarter of an hour, and I am ashamed to my boots. So I am going to tell her what she has asked to be told, and I am going to mean it. And you are going to have to bear it, because I will not be the third person in this family to take what you offer and give you back a closed door. The wood pigeon stopped. Eleanor's heart struck once, hard, against her stays. Your Grace, I do not. From today, said the Duke of Renfield, you are no longer this household's to use. You will keep my grandmother's company, because you love her, and she loves you, and for no other reason, and certainly not for wages, which insult you. You will dine at my table, not below it. You will be dressed as what you are, and not as what this house has let you become. And it will be made known to Mrs. Pruitt, to the county, to Lady Selcombe and her appalling barouche, that Miss Eleanor Hart is under the particular protection and esteem of this family, and that any soul who treats her as less will answer to me. His jaw set. It is your turn, Miss Hart. I am too late to it by 4 years, and I cannot give those back. But it is your turn to be cared for, and I mean to see that you are, whether or not you have the first idea how to allow it, which, watching your face, I perceive you have not. There was a silence in which Eleanor could hear her own pulse, and the scythe on the lawn, and a single tear when it fell at last from the dowager's lashes onto the lavender silk. She had been spoken to in many ways in 25 years. She had been thanked and overlooked and depended upon, and once, by a footman now long gone, very nearly courted. No one had ever stood in the gold of a summer afternoon and informed her, as though it were a debt of honor and not a kindness at all, that her turn had come. "You cannot," she said, and her voice was not steady, and she hated that it was not. "Your Grace, you do not know me. You came home this morning. You cannot decide a person's whole. I have decided a great many things this morning that I knew nothing of yesterday," the Duke said. "This is the only one I am sure of." And he held her gaze, steady and black and faintly, terribly kind, until Eleanor, who had not wept in front of another living soul since she was a girl, who had built her entire self upon the rock of being the one who did not need, felt the first hot, mortifying sting rise behind her eyes, and turned sharply to the window so that neither of them should see it, and found that her hands, for the first time in 4 years, had nothing whatever to do. Behind her, gentle and merciless, the Dowager began, very softly, to laugh. "Oh, Alaric," she said. "Oh, my dear boy. You have no notion what you have begun." And Eleanor, staring out at the blowsy, ruined roses with the whole shape of her life coming quietly apart in her chest, was very much afraid that neither of them had. By the time the long-case clock in the hall told 4, the news had run through Renfield the way fire runs through dry stubble, fast, low, and leaving the air changed behind it. Eleanor heard it before she reached the bottom of the back stair, the rise and fall of voices in the servants' passage, hushing as her step came near, swelling again the moment they judged her past. She went down into the cool of the still room, because it was the only room in the house that had ever belonged to her, and stood with both hands flat on the scrubbed deal table, and breathed the green and the beeswax until her heart stopped knocking. The latch lifted behind her. She did not need to turn. Is it true? Mrs. Pruitt's keys did not ring. She had gripped them still in her fist. What Sarah heard at the door. That you're to dine above stairs. That His Grace has said, the housekeeper's mouth worked, Miss Hart, that you're to be dressed and set at table like a lady of the house. I did not ask for it. Eleanor turned. The older woman's face was not unkind. That was the worst of it. It was bewildered, and under the bewilderment a thin, hurt thread of something Eleanor knew at once for the beginning of resentment. Mrs. Pruitt, you must believe me. I knelt on that floor not 3 hours ago grinding chamomile, the same as every morning of 4 years. I asked for nothing. And yet, Mrs. Pruitt set the keys down on the table between them, with a small, deliberate click, the way a woman lays down a card she would rather not play. And yet, here we are, and cook's in a taking. And the upper housemaid says if a companion's to sit above the salt, she don't see why she should carry the companion's coals. And I've not the answer to give her. 4 years you've been one of us. You've blacked your own grate sooner than ring. And now of a sudden you're set apart. Her chin came up, exactly, terribly, as the Dowager's did. Folk don't forgive being set apart, Miss Hart. Not them as is left below. You of all souls should know it. I do know it. Eleanor's throat ached. The summer light came thin and white through the high north window, finding the dust of dried herbs hanging in the still air, and she had the wild thought that she would have given a year of her wages to be back inside that morning, on her knees, anonymous, and safe. Tell cook I will carry my own coals, as I have always done. Tell the housemaid I will black my own grate. Nothing His Grace has said need alter one. It alters everything, said Mrs. Pruitt, not cruelly, and gathered up her keys, and went out, and the small cold draught of the closing door was the first of the storm that Eleanor had felt coming for an hour, and could no more stop than she could stop the tide off the Wells sands. She did not go up to dinner. She sent word by Sarah that she would sit with her Grace, who tired in the evenings, and she took a tray to the Dowager's room and fed her thin chicken broth, and read 3 pages of a very dull sermon until the old woman's breathing eased into sleep. Then she carried the tray down the back way, past the green baize door, into the gritty stone passage that smelled of tallow and cooling fat, and she had nearly gained the scullery when she heard, unmistakably, the Duke's voice ahead of her in the dark. "I am told," he said, "that Miss Hart has elected to dine on a tray in a sick room rather than at my table. I am further told that this was her own choice, freely made, and that no one below this house's stairs is to blame for it." Eleanor stopped. He stood at the foot of the kitchen stair with a branch of candles in his hand, a duke holding his own light, in the servants' passage, where no Duke of Renfield had set his boot in living memory. The flames threw his shadow vast and dark up the whitewashed wall. "Your Grace." She bobbed, the tray balanced on one hip. "I did not wish to put the household to the trouble of Miss Hart." He came toward her and took the tray from her hands before she could prevent it, with the same unthinking ease with which he had stilled his grandmother's restless fingers that afternoon, and stood holding it, chicken bones, a smeared bowl, a cooling pot, as though it were the most ordinary burden in the world. "You have spent 4 years teaching this house that you require nothing. I begin to see it will be the labor of my life to unteach it. Where does this go? Your Grace, you cannot carry her. I have carried a great deal heavier than a luncheon tray, and over worse ground than your scullery floor." Something flickered at the corner of his mouth, there and gone, the place a smile might stand in a man unaccustomed to standing there. "Though I confess the smell of it is more alarming than anything I met on the peninsula. What in heaven's name is that grey article?" "It is goose grease salve. Your Grace. For her Grace's chest. It smells of geese because it is made of geese." And then, because the candlelight made him human, and because she was very tired, and because no one had teased her in so long that she had forgotten the muscle for it, "If your Grace finds it alarming, your Grace need not breathe." He looked at her. For a moment she thought she had gone too far, and her stomach dropped, and then he made a sound she did not at first recognize, low in his chest, and realized with astonishment that the Duke of Renfield was, very quietly, laughing. "No," he agreed gravely. "I expect I need not." He set the tray on the scullery shelf himself, and turned, and the laughter was gone, but its warmth had not entirely left his face. "Good night, Miss Hart. You will dine at my table tomorrow. I shall send Mrs. Pruitt a list of persons who answer to me, and I shall set your name at the head of it, and we shall see whose coals get carried then." He took up his single branch of candles and went away up the dark stair, and Eleanor stood in the cold passage, with her hands empty and her face hot, and the entirely unwelcome discovery that she had, for the space of one foolish exchange, been happy. The reckoning came 2 days later, and it came, as the Dowager had darkly promised it would, in the shape of Lady Selcombe's barouche. It was the hottest afternoon of the summer. The lower lawn had gone the colour of straw. Bees laboured in the lavender along the south walk. Even the wood pigeons had fallen silent in the heavy gold air. Eleanor was in the small parlour adjusting the Dowager's shawl, for the old woman had insisted on being brought down, had insisted on the good lace, had insisted, with the particular brightness of a general who scents a battle, on being placed where she might command the door, when the wheels crunched on the gravel and Mrs. Pruitt announced, in a voice gone flat with disapproval, "Lady Selcombe, Your Grace." And Miss Selcombe. They came in on a wave of jasmine scent and rustling India muslin, mother and daughter, and Eleanor understood at one glance why the Dowager had armed herself. Lady Selcombe was a handsome, high-coloured woman with eyes that took the worth of a room before they took its welcome. And Miss Selcombe was beautiful. There was no withholding it. Dark and cool and lovely as a portrait, her muslin the precise blue of a summer dusk, her glance moving once across Eleanor's plain grey gown and dismissing it with the small, complete efficiency of a woman crossing out a line. "Dearest Duchess." Lady Selcombe bent to the Dowager's cheek. "We could not stay away an hour longer once we heard the dear Duke was home. Such joy for you. Augusta has spoken of nothing else. Her gaze flicked, idle, to Eleanor. And your nurse, is it? How good. Pray, my dear, the window, the heat is insupportable. My companion, said the Dowager, with a sweetness that would have warned anyone who knew her, Miss Hart, will do nothing of the kind, as she is not a footman. But you may ring if you are warm, Maria. The bell is precisely where it was the last time you came to look at my furniture. A small silence. Miss Selcombe arranged her skirts upon the sofa and smiled at no one. Is His Grace at home? She asked. We met such a charming account of his return on the Bath Road. Mamma says he is quite the most eligible. A little laugh, well, one must not say such things. But it has been so very dull in the county without him. The door opened on the word, and the Duke came in. Eleanor watched it all from her place at the Dowager's shoulder, where she had learned in 4 years to make herself a fixture of the furniture. And she watched Miss Selcombe's whole person change, soften, brighten, incline the way a flower turns to follow the sun. It was beautifully done. It was the work of a girl who had been trained from the cradle for precisely this room and precisely this man, and Eleanor, who had been trained for sick rooms and still rooms and the carrying of trays, felt something small and unworthy curl cold in her chest, and named it, honestly, for what it was, and was ashamed. Lady Selcombe. The Duke bowed. His eyes had already found Eleanor at the Dowager's shoulder. They came back to his guests with visible effort. Miss Selcombe, you are very good to call in such heat. We could not keep away, said Miss Selcombe, and the conversation closed over her like water, and Eleanor was furniture again, and was glad of it. She would have remained furniture, perhaps, the whole length of the call, had the Dowager not, with the deliberate, gleeful malice of a woman who has nothing left to lose and a great deal of pleasure to be got from saying things, turned the whole of her sharp old attention upon the room and said, into a lull, Eleanor, child, come and sit by me. No, here, on the chair. You have been on your feet since 5. Alaric, you will recollect what I told you. Miss Hart is no longer to wait upon this house standing in corners. She is to be treated as one of the family, by my order and by my grandsons, and I should like the county to begin as it is to go on. The temperature of the parlour dropped a full 10 degrees. Lady Selcombe's teacup paused, perfectly level, halfway to her lips. Miss Selcombe's lovely face did not move at all, which was somehow worse than if it had. And into the brittle quiet Lady Selcombe said, with a little laugh light as cracking ice, one of the family, How democratic, how very modern of you, Duchess. I am sure I have always said there is no creature so deserving as a good, faithful, attached servant. Augusta, have we not always said it? Always, mamma, said Miss Selcombe. Miss Hart is not a servant, said the Duke. He said it quietly. He had not raised his voice. Eleanor was learning that he never raised his voice, that the not raising was itself the weapon. And he set down his own cup with a small click into the saucer, and the room came to attention, as a regiment comes to attention. Forgive me, said Lady Selcombe, smiling. What is she, then? It was the question Eleanor had been dreading since the Dowager opened her mouth, because it was the question to which there was no safe answer, and she saw, in the half-second before the Duke spoke, every door of her ruin standing open. Companion was respectable. One of the family was nothing, was heir, was a thing that meant whatever the speaker's cruelty chose to make it mean. And she saw Lady Selcombe choosing. She is, said the Duke, the woman to whom my grandmother owes 4 years of her life, and to whom I owe a debt I do not expect to discharge in mine. She is under the particular protection and esteem of this family. I had thought I made that plain. Oh, you made it perfectly plain, murmured Lady Selcombe, and into the word protection she poured such a freight of soft, smiling, unspeakable meaning that Eleanor felt the blood leave her own face. Perfectly. Particular protection. We shall be sure to repeat it exactly so, shan't we, Augusta? to anyone who should chance to ask. The county does so love to know how its great families order themselves. She rose, gathering her muslin, all warmth and venom. Duchess, we have tired you. Augusta, we shall come again very soon. Now that the house is grown so interesting. They were gone in a rustle of jasmine. The wheels ground away down the drive, and in the ringing silence the dowager said, with sudden, fading weariness, I have done you a mischief, child, I see it now. I meant only to set you up, and I have handed that woman a stick to beat you with. She closed her eyes. Take me up. I am tired. I am a foolish old woman who plays at chess with people's lives and forgets they bruise. Eleanor took her up. She did it as she did everything, steadily, her hands knowing the music before her mind did, and she did not let the dowager see her face, because her face was not steady at all. She did not understand the full weight of what Lady Selcombe had carried away in her barouche until the following morning, when she came upon the Duke in the long gallery, standing before the window with an opened letter in his hand and an expression she had not seen on him before, a stillness with something dangerous banked beneath it. Miss Hart. He did not turn. You read faces. Read this one. My cousin Mr. Crawford writes me from town. He is the gentleman who would have Renfield, you understand, were I to oblige him by never marrying, heir presumptive, and impatient of the presumptive. A short, mirthless breath. He has heard already, 40 miles off, and not 18 hours since, and he has heard. He writes to condole with me. He writes that he is happy to learn the Duke has installed the paper crumpled a fraction in his hand, a comfort in his grandmother's house, and that he trusts I will be more discreet than my late uncle, for the family's sake. He encloses his felicitations. The Duke turned at last. Lady Selcombe did not waste her afternoon. Eleanor stood very still in the long bars of summer light. Your Grace, she said, and her voice came out a stranger's, low and careful. I told you that you could not decide a person's whole life in a morning. This is what I meant. You have spent 2 days lifting me up where the whole county can see me, and now the whole county will say the one thing about a poor woman raised up by a young duke that the world always says, and there is no protection on this earth, particular or otherwise, that will keep them from saying it. You meant a kindness. You have made me a scandal. Then I shall unmake it. His jaw set. I shall write to Crawford. You shall write to Crawford that it is not true. And Crawford shall read that a duke protests, and Crawford shall smile. She was trembling, and despised it. Do you not see? There is no word you can say that does not feed it. Your silence feeds it. Your anger feeds it. The only thing that ever starved such a tale was my being beneath notice, and you have cured me of that, Your Grace, most thoroughly, in 2 days. He crossed the gallery to her. He stopped a careful pace away, too far to touch, near enough that she could see the dust of temper in his black eyes, giving way to something graver. Tell me what to do, he said. You manage scenes. I have watched you manage my grandmother off the edge of terror, with a cordial glass and a steady voice. Manage this. Tell me how to undo the harm I have done you, and I will do it tonight. And there it was, the thing she had no answer to, the help she could not give. Because for the first time in 4 years the storm at the edge of which she stood with her steady hands was her own. She opened her mouth to tell him there was nothing, that the only mending was time, and her own quiet vanishing back into the grey of the still-room. And Mrs. Pruitt's step came quick and hard along the gallery, and the housekeeper's face, when she reached them, had gone the particular ash-grey of 4 days past, the grey of a woman bringing news that cannot wait on courtesy. Your Grace. Miss Hart, it's her Grace. Her keys were silent in her shaking fist. She was took bad an hour gone, worse than I've seen, and the doctor's sent for. But he's at Wells, and won't come before dark, and she's calling for you, Miss Hart. Only for you. And Mrs. Pruitt's voice broke clean across. And there's a gentleman come up the drive not 5 minutes since, in a hired chaise, and give his name as Mr. Crawford, and says he's come to see his cousin's grandmother while there's yet time. And he's in the hall this moment, Your Grace, asking to be taken up to her room." For a moment, no one in the long gallery moved. The summer light lay in white bars across the floor, and the dust turned slow in it, and Eleanor heard the whole house holding its breath through the bones of her own. Then, her body decided before her mind had finished. She was already moving, past Mrs. Pruitt, past the Duke, her grey skirts catching the corner of a console table and setting a china shepherdess rocking, and she did not stop to steady it. "The cordial," she said over her shoulder, to anyone. "The French cordial, the green bottle. It is on the high shelf in the still room, and the kettle wants to be on. Sarah knows. Tell Sarah. Miss Hart." The Duke's voice came after her, level even now. "Crawford is in the hall." "Then your Grace had better see to Crawford," she said, "for I cannot." And she went down the gallery and down the great stair with her hand skimming the rail, and at the turn of it she came full upon the gentleman himself. She knew him at once for a Renfield. He had the black eyes, but where the Duke's were banked coals, this man's were bright, quick, restless things that had learned to find the price of a room before its welcome, exactly as Lady Selkham's had. He was handsome in the way a well-cut coat is handsome, every line of him considered. He stood in the cool of the marble hall, with his hat still in his hand and his travelling dust artfully arranged, and he smiled up at her as she came down, and the smile knew her. "Ah," he said softly. "And here, I think, is the comfort." Eleanor stopped one step above him, because to go lower was to let him bar her path, and she had no time. No time. The old woman was calling for her 40 feet overhead. "You are Mr. Crawford, I am, and you need not tell me who you are." His glance went over her grey gown, her herb-stained cuffs, the loose strand of hair at her temple, and gathered it all up like a man counting coins. "The reports did not do you justice, Miss Hart. They led me to expect something rather more, calculating. You look only tired." He tilted his head. "I am told my poor aunt is failing. I have come a long, hot road to sit at her side while there is yet time. You will take me up to her." "I will not." The words were out before fear could soften them. "Her Grace is very ill, sir. She is calling for me, and she is not to be startled. And the sight of a strange face at her door this hour would do her a harm I will not answer for. You will wait." The bright eyes narrowed a fraction, pleasantly, a strange face. "I am her own blood, Miss Hart. You are her apothecary's errand girl, raised 3 days since to, what was the phrase, particular esteem." He let it lie in the cool air between them. "Jasmine faint, poisonous. I think you mistake which of us the lady's family will thank for keeping the other from her side." Crawford, the Duke, had come to the head of the stair. He did not hurry down it. He descended as a man descends who owns every tread, and the candle shadow of him fell long down the marble. "You will not address Miss Hart in my house in that tone. You will not address her at all, unless it is to thank her, which I perceive is beyond your education." He reached the foot of the stair and stood, and the two cousins took each other's measure across 4 feet of summer-warm marble, the black eyes and the black eyes. "She is going up to my grandmother, because my grandmother has asked for her. You and I will wait in the library like Christians, and you will tell me to my face the thing you were content to write." Crawford's smile did not waver, but something behind it adjusted, the way a card player's hand adjusts when the stakes are named aloud. "Cousin, I came in kindness. You came in a hired chaise, 18 hours after a tea party." The Duke turned his head a half-inch toward Eleanor, without taking his eyes from his cousin. "Go up, Miss Hart. I have him." She went. Behind her she heard Crawford say, lightly, "You are very fierce in her defence, Alaric. People will remark it," and she heard the Duke say nothing at all, which was, she had learned, the most dangerous answer he owned, and then she was at the top of the house, and there was no more room in her for the men below. The Dowager's chamber was dim, the curtains half-drawn against the white heat, the air thick with beeswax and lavender water, and, under it, the faint, sweetish wrongness that Eleanor had come in 4 years to dread. The old woman lay too low against her pillows, her good lace cap askew, her ringed hands moving on the counterpane as though she searched the linen for something she had lost. Her breath came short and high, with a catch at the top of each one like a thread snagging. "There you are," she said, and the relief in it broke Eleanor's heart clean across. "There you are. I told them you would come. Where have you been?" "I have been calling these 100 years. "I have been 3 minutes," Eleanor said, low and even, and her hands were already at work, turning the pillow to its cool side, drawing the lace straight, finding the narrow shoulders and easing them higher so the labouring chest had room. 3 minutes, and I am here now, and you are not to spend your breath scolding me. You will want it for better things. Sarah is bringing the green bottle. Breathe with me, slow, as we have done. In, there, and out. You are cross. That is a very good sign. Be crosser." "I am furious." The old woman gripped her wrist, the thin fingers surprisingly strong, the grip that had not forgotten how to command. "Eleanor, listen to me while I have the wind for it. That serpent is in my house. I heard the chaise. Crawford, he has come to count the spoons over the catch in her breath, over my pillows, the carrion thing. And he will tell the world I am past sense, and he will tell the world worse of you. Hush, now, hush." The door breathed open, Sarah's frightened young face, the green bottle, the kettle's steam behind her on a tray. Eleanor took it without a wasted motion, measured the cordial into the little glass by the light of habit, rather than sight, set it to the cracked lips. "Drink, the good French, that I bought with my dreadful vanity. There, all of it." There, the dowager drank, and coughed, and breathed, and the high snag at the top of each breath eased by a hair, then by another. Eleanor knelt at the bedside on the worn place in the carpet that was the size and shape of her own 4 years, and she did not let go of the old woman's hand, and slowly, slowly, the labouring chest learned its rhythm again. "Better," the dowager murmured at last, her eyes half shut. "Wicked stuff. I shall live to be 100 to spite him. Eleanor, I am here. You will not let him send you away." The black eyes opened, and they were lucid, terribly lucid, the way the lamp flares clearest just before the oil is low. "When I am past minding the house, he will try to clear you out of it like a draught. And Alaric is a good boy, a better boy than I deserved, but he is a man, and men do their kindness like cavalry, all at the charge, and never see the ground they cut up behind them. You see the ground. You have always seen the ground. Promise me you will not slip away into your still room and let them say it was your idea, the way you let them say everything was your idea. All these years, sooner than make a fuss." Eleanor's throat closed. The summer pressed at the window. Somewhere below a door shut hard, and a man's voice rose and was answered. "Lower. I cannot promise that," she said honestly. "Your Grace, I do not know how to stay where I am not wanted. I have never learnt it. I only know how to be useful, and a woman the county is whispering of is not useful to anyone. She is only a millstone, and I will not be a millstone round that good boy's neck, because an old woman is fond of me." Fond, the dowager's laugh was a thread, but it was a laugh. "I am not fond of you, you ridiculous creature. One is fond of spaniels." The breath snagged again, and Eleanor's hand tightened, and the old woman waved her off, impatient even now. "No, I am well enough. Let me say it. I love you as I never managed to love my own daughter, God forgive me, because you came to me a stranger and asked nothing, and I had nothing left to give, and you took the nothing and were kind to it. Do you know what that is, child, to be loved when you have nothing left to trade? No, you do not. No one has ever done it for you." Her ringed fingers turned, found Eleanor's, gripped. "It is your turn." He said it, and he was right, and it is the only true thing the foolish boy has done since he came home. Do not you dare refuse it out of habit." Eleanor laid her cheek for one moment against the back of the old knotted hand, because she could not answer, and because there was no one in the dim room to see her do it but the woman whose hand it was. The lavender water, the beeswax, the steam off the kettle cooling on the tray. Then she lifted her head and steadied her face and reached for the cloth and the basin. "Rest now," she said. "You have routed me thoroughly. Let me bathe your temples and you shall sleep. And I shall be in the chair when you wake, exactly where I have always been. In the chair." The dowager's eyes were closing, mind you are, and Eleanor, "Send me up that black-eyed devil's grandson, not the devil. I have a thing to say to Alaric before I lose the wind for it, and I should like to say it while I still—" Her voice trailed into the cool linen. "While I still frighten him a little." Eleanor bathed the seamed temples until the breathing went long and even, and the ringed hands lay quiet at last. Then she rose, the ache in her back blooming as it always bloomed, and she stood a moment in the dimness looking down at the face that had been the most admired in 3 counties and was now only beloved. And she went out softly to fetch the Duke, and found instead that the Duke had come to fetch her. He was on the landing, his back to the wall beside the door, and he straightened when she came out. In the close heat of the upper house his coat was off and his shirt open at the throat, and he looked younger so, and graver, and Eleanor saw that he had been standing there some while, listening to the rhythm of his grandmother's breath through the door, the way a man listens for the turn of a tide. "She is easier," Eleanor said. "She sleeps. She asks for you, only you. She has, she says, a thing to tell you while she still frightens you a little." A breath of something that was nearly a smile passed between them, and was gone, snuffed by the gravity of the hour. "Go gently. She is very low, your grace, lower than she will own, and the doctor cannot come before dark, and there is nothing more in my power to give her than I have given. I will not lie to you. You asked me once to tell you the truth when everyone else was being kind. This is the truth. Her hours are not many." She watched it land. She watched the muscle move once in his jaw, and then go still, mastered, and she understood, with a small private ache she had no right to, what it had cost him to come home to this, what it cost him to stand straight under it now. "Thank you," he said, very low, "for telling me plainly. No one in my life has ever told me plainly. They bring it to me wrapped, like a wound a surgeon will not let you see." He looked at the door, and back at her. "And thank you for 4 years I knew nothing of. I find I cannot stop saying it, and I find it is not enough. It was not for thanks. I know. That is why it undoes me." He drew a breath, set his hand to the latch, and paused. "Crawford is in the library, with a glass of my own port, and a great many felicitations. I have not yet decided what to do with him. When I come down I should be glad of your counsel, Miss Hart, yours, for you read the man in half a minute, and I am too angry to read anything. Will you wait for me?" "I will be in the chair," Eleanor said, "exactly where I have always been," and something flickered in the black eyes that might have been the place a smile would stand, and he went in to his grandmother and shut the door very softly behind him. She did not go back to the chair at once. She went down, only as far as the half landing, where the great window let the gold afternoon fall full across the stair, to send Sarah up with fresh water and to learn, if she could, how the land lay below, and there, in the slant of hot light, Mr. Crawford was waiting for her. He had a way, she was learning, of being already in the place one was about to come to. Miss Hart. He had left his port behind him, and brought only his smile. He stood easily against the carved newel, turning his signet ring with his thumb, and the gesture was so exactly his cousin's that Eleanor felt the wrongness of it, like a wrong note in a familiar tune. We were interrupted. "Will you give me a moment? It is to your advantage. I am, Whatever my cousin has told you, a practical man and practical men deal kindly with one another when they understand their interests. I have no interests, sir, beyond her Grace's comfort, and you are between me and the water she needs. Then I will be brief, and you may fetch your water." He did not move. "You are not a stupid woman, the contrary, so I will not insult you with surprise. You know what is said of you already. By tomorrow it will be said in town, where my aunt's cousin, Lady Selcombe, has, I understand, considerable correspondence. A young duke, a pretty companion of no family, a household ordered to call her one of its own. The world has read that page before, Miss Hart, and it knows the ending, and nothing my hot-headed cousin says in your defense will write a different one. You know this. You said as much to him in the gallery this morning. I was, I confess, listening. The blood went out of her face, and she felt it go. Then you know I take no pleasure in it, and seek no advantage from it, and want only to be of use. Yes, he said you would say so." Crawford's smile sharpened, and the bright eyes were not cruel. That was the horror of it. They were only clear. "Here is my kindness, Miss Hart, and it is real, though you will not thank me for it. My cousin will within the week do something gallant and irreparable. I have watched him since he was a boy charge a thing he could not carry. He will marry you, to stop the talk, to discharge his debt, to prove the county wrong. He will do it the way he carries luncheon trays down servants' stairs, gloriously, and without once asking whether you wish to be carried. And he will ruin himself doing it. A Renfield who marries his grandmother's nurse off the back stair does not silence the world, my dear. He confirms it. Every door in 3 counties closes. The dowagers cut him. The estate that needs a great marriage to mend 2 bad harvests gets instead a great scandal. He let that lie. You love the old woman. I think, God help you, you are halfway to loving the boy, though you would correct me. So I ask you, do you love them enough to be the ruin of them? Or do you love them enough to go?" The window's gold lay hot on the back of Eleanor's neck. Below, the long case clock counted, indifferent. She thought of the worn place in the carpet upstairs the size of her own 4 years, and the green bottle, and the old hand that had gripped hers and said, "Do not you dare refuse it out of habit." And she thought, with a cold, clear honesty that frightened her, that the serpent in the summer light was telling her the truth, or near enough to it that she could not find the seam where the lie was sewn. "What is it you want, Mr. Crawford?" she said. "Men do not ride a long hot road to do a stranger a kindness. You have told me what I am to fear. Now tell me what you are." His smile widened, genuinely pleased. "There, I said you were not stupid." He drew from his breast a folded paper, and held it, not offering it yet, a card kept face down. "I want what is mine, Miss Hart, and a little sooner than nature intends to give it. I want my cousin unmarried, and my way to Renfield clear, and I am willing to pay for it, handsomely and at once, in good coin to a woman who has been paid in nothing but trouble for 25 years. £200. A character in my own hand that will get you a respectable place in any house in the north, where this tale has not reached, and will not. A chaise at the door within the hour. You need only go up, take your leave of the old woman while she sleeps, and be gone before my cousin comes down. I will tell him you chose it. I will tell him it was your idea. You let people say everything was your idea, do you not? And he will believe it, because it is exactly the noble, self-erasing thing he already half expects of you. He will grieve. He will mend. And you will have done, at the last, the one truly loving thing left in your power. You will have got out of their way. He held the folded paper a fraction nearer. Take it, and save them. Refuse it, and watch yourself unmake everything you have spent 4 years building. I am, you see, the only honest man in this house. For one long moment, and she would be ashamed of the moment for the rest of her life, and never quite able to unfeel it, Eleanor looked at the folded paper in the gold light and saw, with perfect clarity, the whole of the safe and quiet road it offered, a respectable place, a clean character, an honourable vanishing. The old griefs of being beneath noticed closing over her again like cool water over a dropped stone. It was everything she knew how to be. It was the still room on her knees, anonymous and safe, made permanent. Her hand even rose a little, the trained hand that took burdens from people without being asked. And then she heard, 2 floors up and clear through the summer-still house, the thread of the dowager's voice, fretful in half-sleep, saying a name, not Crawford's, not the Duke's, saying Eleanor. Her hand fell. "No," she said. Crawford's brows rose. "No, no, sir." Her voice was very low, and it did not shake, and she discovered, astonished, that it did not shake, because for the first time in 4 years she was not managing anyone's storm, but standing in the center of her own, and finding her feet on the ground of it. "You have told me a great deal of truth, and wrapped one lie in the middle of it so neatly that I nearly swallowed the whole. The truth is that I may ruin them. The truth is that I do not know how to be cared for, and have been afraid of it since the carriage came up the drive. The lie is that vanishing is the loving thing. You would have me go because my going serves you, and you have dressed your own hunger in my conscience, and held it up as a looking-glass, and I have looked into it, and I have seen you behind my own face." She drew a breath that went all the way down. "I do not yet know what I shall do, Mr. Crawford, but I will not be paid £200 to call my own running away a kindness, and I will not let you tell that good man it was my idea, because it would be a lie, and he has had a lifetime of people wrapping things from him, and from me he shall have the truth, or he shall have nothing. Now put up your paper. You are between me and the water, and her grace is calling." The smile was quite gone now. The bright eyes had gone flat and cold and clear as pond ice, and Eleanor understood that she had made, in the space of one breath, a true and lasting enemy, and could not bring herself to be sorry. "You are a fool," Crawford said softly, folding the paper away. "A noble fool. They are the most expensive kind. Remember, when it is all in ruins about you, that an honest man offered you the chaise, and you would not get in." He inclined his head, the very picture of a wronged relation, and stepped at last out of her path. "I shall stay to see my aunt, of course, as is my right. We shall have a great deal of time, you and I, to grow better acquainted. I look forward to it." "Mr. Crawford," the Duke's voice came down the stair above them. He had come out from his grandmother's room. He stood at the head of the flight with his shirt still open at the throat and his face very pale and very still. And Eleanor knew at one look that the old woman had said her thing to him, whatever it had been, and that it had marked him. He came down slowly, and his black eyes went from his cousin's smooth face to Eleanor's white one, reading, "My cousin," he said, "reaching the half-landing, appears to have been making you an offer, Miss Hart. I heard the last of it from above. A chaise at the door. £200. A character in his own hand." His voice was terribly even. Did I hear it rightly? Eleanor's mouth was dry. Here it was, the truth she had promised him, and it would wound him. And it would wound him worse to learn she had hesitated, and she had sworn he should have it whole or not at all. "You heard it rightly, Your Grace. He offered me money to be gone before you came down, and to let him tell you it was my own choice." She lifted her chin. "And I will tell you the rest, because I said you should have the truth from me and not a wrapped thing. For one moment, I was tempted. Not by his coin, by the safety of it, by the old, easy road of being nobody, which I know how to walk, and this new road, which I do not. I looked at the paper, and I wanted to take it, and then I did not, and I told him no, and I would have told you so myself within the hour, whether you had heard it or not. That is the whole of it. There is no part I have kept back." The landing was very quiet. The gold light moved a slow inch along the wall. Crawford watched them both with the bright, patient interest of a man who has lost a hand and means to win the rubber. The Duke looked at her for a long moment, and Eleanor could not read what moved behind the black eyes, and the not knowing was the worst thing she had felt all that long, terrible day. "You were tempted," he said at last, "and you told me so, when you might have let me believe you never wavered, and stood a saint in my eyes forever." A breath. "Do you know, Miss Hart, I think that is the first time in my whole life a person has handed me a truth that cost them something and asked nothing for it. My grandmother said," his voice caught, and he mastered it. "My grandmother said, just now, that I was to marry you. That it was the only thing that would keep you safe and keep the talk from her ears before she made me give my word. She is upstairs this minute believing I have promised it." He turned, slowly, to his cousin. "And you, Crawford, have just tried to buy the woman out of my house with £200 and a lie. You have answered the only question I had left." "Alaric," Crawford's voice was smooth as poured cream, "you are overwrought. Your grandmother is failing. You are not yourself. You would not, surely, do in grief the very thing that ends your house. Marry your nurse, and I promise you every door from here to London will close. Yes, you have all of you been very eager to tell me so." The Duke came down the last steps to the marble of the hall, and he stood between his cousin and Eleanor, and he was not loud, he was never loud, and the hall rang with him all the same. "Here is what you will do, cousin. You will go up and pay your respects to my grandmother, briefly and gently, because she asked to be frightened only by me and not by you. And then you will get into your hired chaise and go back to the town where your felicitations come from. And you will wait, as you have always waited, for a thing that is not going to come to you." He turned. "And you, Miss Hart?" "Your Grace." Eleanor's heart was beating so hard she thought the two men must hear it. "You cannot. Not from your grandmother's bedside, not in anger, not to spite him, not to silence the county. These are none of them reasons to bind your whole life to a stranger off the back stair, and you know it. You said yourself you decide things at the charge. I am not deciding it now." His black eyes held her, steady and dark and faintly, terribly certain, exactly as they had held her 3 days since across the gold of the long drawing-room. "I decided it, I find, somewhere on the servants' stair with a luncheon tray in my hands, and I have only this moment had the wit to know it. But I will not do it the way I do everything else, gloriously, and without asking. So, I am asking. Not today. Today you have grief enough, and so have I. But I am telling you, before this serpent and before God, that when my grandmother's hours are run, and the house is quiet, I am going to ask you to be my wife. In earnest, and not for spite. And I am going to go on asking until you have stopped being afraid of the asking, however long that takes. Because it is your turn, Eleanor Hart, and I have only just learned what that means, and I do not mean to unlearn it." The hall held its breath. Above them, faint and fretful, the old voice called the name again, Eleanor, and Crawford smiled his flat cold pond ice smile, and turned, and started up the stair toward the dying woman's room, as though he had all the time in the world, and Eleanor stood between the two black-eyed men, with her trained hands empty at her sides, and the whole shape of her life coming apart and remaking itself in the same hot breath, and found she could not answer either of them, not the cousin climbing toward the room she must defend, nor the Duke standing in the gold of the hall, asking her to be loved, and that there was no longer any still room in the world quiet enough to hide in. It was the sound of his boot on the third stair that moved her. Eleanor came off the half landing as though a string had been cut, her grey skirts gathered in both fists, and she went up past Crawford on the wall side, swift and silent, and reached the head of the flight before he had climbed it. She turned there, set her back to the dowager's door, and stood. Her breath came hard. Her hand found the cool brass of the latch behind her, and closed on it, and she felt the warmth of the whole upper house pressing at the window glass, lavender water and beeswax, and, under it, that faint, sweetish wrongness she had come to dread. "You will not go in," she said. Crawford stopped 2 steps below her, unhurried, one gloved hand resting on the rail. The gold afternoon came up the stairwell and lay along his cheek, and he smiled at her, as a man smiles at a gate he means to open at his leisure. "Miss Hart, I am her blood. You are the woman with the keys, which is not the same thing, whatever this house has lately pretended." He came up a step. "Stand aside. I have a right to sit with my aunt. You have a right to wait." Eleanor's voice was low, and it held. Her grace is sleeping, and her heart is laboring, and a strange step at her door this hour could do her a harm I will not answer for. You may sit with her when the doctor has come and judged her strong enough to be displeased. Until then, you will go down. "And if I do not? Then I shall stand here until I drop," Eleanor said. "And you will have the pleasure of forcing a duchess's door over the body of her companion, with the housemaids watching from the back stair. And you may write that to your friends in town, and see how it reads." Something flickered behind the bright eyes. Calculation, swift as a card turned. Below them, faint, the long-case clock counted the half-hour, indifferent to all of it. Crawford's thumb turned the signet ring once, his cousin's gesture worn wrong, and Eleanor held his gaze, and would not give it back. "You are a very devoted Gowler," he murmured. "I am a very tired one," she said. "Do not mistake the two. The tired sort does not let go." The latch lifted under her hand. It lifted from the inside, and the door swung in behind her, and Eleanor turned with her heart in her throat to find the Dowager Duchess of Renfield not sleeping at all, but propped on one thin elbow against her pillows, her good lace cap straight, her black eyes open and burning, with the clear, hard flame of a lamp turned high above a sinking well of oil. "I am not sleeping," the old woman announced to the room at large. "And I am not death. And I will thank the pair of you to stop conducting my obsequies on my own landing while I am still in a position to object. Crawford." The name came out like a thing held at arm's length. "Come in, then, since you have ridden so far to gloat. Come where I can see you. I have wanted a clear look at you these 10 years, and I find I shall not get a better chance." Eleanor stepped aside, her hand going at once to the bedpost, to the cool sheet, to the work her hands knew. But the dowager waved her off with a flick of ringed fingers, impatient, imperial. "No, let me be. I am about my own business now, child, not yours." The black eyes swung back to Crawford, who had come in soft-footed, and stood at the foot of the bed with his hat against his breast, and an expression of tender concern arranged upon his handsome face, like furniture set out for callers. "There he is. Look at you. You have your grandfather's chin and none of his nerve. You have come to count my spoons." "Aunt, you wrong me. I came the moment I heard you were—" "I am old," she said. "I am not a fool, which is the one economy age permits. You came because Maria Selcombe's letters travel faster than mercy, and because you heard a word that frightened you out of your debts." The breath caught at the top, snagged, and she wrote it down with a flat refusal that was pure will. "Yes, your debts. You thought I did not know. Mr. Penfold is my solicitor before he is yours, sir, and he writes to me of who comes asking after the entail upon Renfield, and what such a gentleman owes, and to whom, and how loudly they have begun to ask for it. You are mortgaged past your hat brim. You need this house the way a man under water needs the surface, and you have come to see how near I am to giving it you." The tender concern did not leave Crawford's face, but it set, the way water sets to ice, still the same shape, and nothing living in it. "You are overwrought, aunt," he said gently. "Grief and fever, We will not speak of money at such a— We will speak of exactly money, the Dowager said, for it is the only language you have ever consented to learn, and I would be understood. She turned her head on the pillow, and the imperial voice cracked, for one word, into something nearer tenderness. Eleanor, my writing box, on the dressing table, under the prayer book I never open. Bring it me, and the small brass key from the chain at my throat. Eleanor crossed to the dressing table through the thick, warm air. The box was rosewood, worn pale at the corners by 60 years of hands, and it smelled of sandalwood and old ink when she lifted it. She brought it to the bed and unclasped the fine chain at the Dowager's throat, the old skin warm, the pulse beneath it quick and thin as a bird's, and fitted the little brass key, and the lid came up on a smell of dried violets and pounce and the dry whisper of papers laid by. There, said the Dowager. The one folded in green ribbon. Take it out. Hold it where my nephew can see it, but not reach it, for he has quick hands. Eleanor drew out the paper. It was thick and sealed, and the seal was the Renfield seal, pressed twice, and below the fold a second hand had written and signed across a line, and a third and fourth had witnessed it. She held it up into the gold light. Her own fingers, she found, were not quite steady. Read the first line aloud, child, the Dowager said. I should like to hear it in your voice. It is the only voice in this house I trust to read a true thing truly. Eleanor's eyes found the line. The room went very quiet. Even the labouring breath upon the bed seemed to hush to hear it. And somewhere below, a door closed, and the afternoon pressed gold against the curtains. I, Honoria Margaret Vane, Dowager Duchess of Renfield, Eleanor read, and her voice was low, being of clear mind and my own settled purpose, do give and convey unto Eleanor Hart, spinster, in her own absolute right, and to her own sole use, the house called Comblench with its garden and orchard, and the sum of £200 yearly, to be hers and no other's, that she may never again stand in any house in England as a creature to be turned out at another's word. The paper trembled in the white light. Eleanor could not look away from it. 3 weeks since, the Dowager said softly, into the silence. Before ever my grandson came up the Bath Road. Before there was any talk of protection, or of marriage, or of you, sir, and your felicitations. I had Penfold come out by the carrier's cart, and we did it in this room while you all thought I was sleeping, and we witnessed it with the curate, who can hold his tongue, and Mrs. Pruitt, who cannot but who loves me. I did it for one reason only. Her ringed hand groped across the counterpane, and Eleanor caught it and held it, because I have watched this child give away her one life drop by drop, and I would not leave her to be poured out and then set aside like an empty jug when I was gone. I would have her free to stay, or free to go, or free to refuse a duke to his face if she liked, and not for need of any roof but her own. Your Grace, Eleanor began, and could not go on. It changes the whole board, you see. The old woman's eyes came back to Crawford, and there was a terrible gleam of the old chess player in them. Undimmed, you came to buy a penniless nobody out of my house for £200. Here is £200 a year, and a house of her own, signed and witnessed 3 weeks before your kindness ever set out. She is not a companion you may chase off. She is a gentlewoman of independent means. Missed Crawford, and the next person who calls her my grandson's comfort may be invited to explain the slander before a magistrate, for she has now the standing to require it. You have ridden a long, hot road, nephew, to be 18 days too late. For a moment, Crawford said nothing. The gold light slid along the rosewood box. Then the ice at the bottom of him showed itself at last, bright and clear and cold, and he set his hat down upon the foot of the bed, with great care, and he smiled. How very thorough, he said. How very like you, aunt, to spend the estate's substance arming your nurse against your own heir. 200 a year out of land that wants every shilling to mend 2 bad harvests. Alaric will thank you for that, when the rents come in short and the mortgages he has not yet heard of fall due. He inclined his head toward Eleanor, smooth as poured cream gone sour. You have got your price, after all, Miss Hart, and dearer than mine. I congratulate you. You played the long sickbed better than I credited. 3 weeks of devotion for a house and a competence. Why, it is the best wages any companion in England ever drew, and all of it sworn to before witnesses, while the lady was, as you put it, of clear mind. He let the words lie in the warm air. I wonder how clear a county will think it. An old woman, failing, fevered, signing away the estate's income to the girl who measures her cordials. There is a page the world has read before too, aunt. It does not end in your favor either. You, Eleanor began. Hot, and the dowager's hand tightened on hers in warning. Let him, the old woman breathed. Let him show his hand to the room. It is what I brought him up here for. I will say it plainly then, since we are all being so honest. Crawford's voice dropped, confiding, reasonable, dreadful. Tear it up. Here, now, the 4 of us, and no harm done. Let the paper go into the grate, and I will forget I saw it, and I will forget what I heard on the gallery this morning, and I will go back to town and I will say nothing, of a Renfield household ordered upside down round a herb woman with her hand in the writing box. Keep it, and I will read that line aloud in every drawing room from here to St. James's, and I will let the world decide whether a duchess of clear mind gives away her son's birthright to a servant, or whether a clever girl took it from a failing woman in a shut room. You may have the house, Miss Hart, or you may have your good name. You shall not, I think, keep both. The door opened. The Duke of Renfield stood in it, his shirt still open at the throat, his face the colour of ash, and his black eyes gone very bright and very still, and Eleanor knew at one look that he had heard the last of it from the corridor, as he had a way of doing, and that this time the not raising of his voice would be the most dangerous thing in the house. My cousin, he said quietly, has just offered to be silent about my grandmother's gift in exchange for the burning of it. I heard that part clearly. I should be glad to hear him say it again to my face, so that I am certain of it before I throw him out of my house. Alaric, Crawford turned, all warmth, his hands opening. Thank God. You have come to your senses, I hope. Listen to me as a friend, as your nearest blood. You are not my friend, the Duke said, and you have spent the afternoon trying to bribe a woman off my back stair and frighten an old woman out of her own settled mind. And now you would have me believe you are my nearest blood and mean me well. He came into the room. He moved as he always moved, without hurry, as a man moves over ground he owns, and he stopped beside the bed, between his cousin and the woman in it, and he set one large hand very gently upon the dowager's shoulder. Grandmother, is the paper your true wish? Made freely? In your own mind? By your own design? It is the soundest thing I have done in 40 years, the old woman said, and the only one I am wholly proud of. Penfold has the duplicate underlock in Wells. Burn this one, and there is another. Burn that one, and I shall come back and haunt the pair of you. The black eyes glinted. I made it for love, Alaric, not for spite, not to wrong you, not to arm anyone against you. For love. You will find, when you are my age, that it is the only money that ever spends true. The Duke bent his head. When he straightened, he had mastered whatever had moved in his face, and he turned to his cousin, with the flat, level certainty Eleanor had learned to read, as the edge of him. Then, here is your answer, Crawford, and it is the last word I will spend on you under this roof. Tell your story. Tell it in every drawing room you can buy your way into. Read that line aloud till you are hoarse. He drew a slow breath. And know that I shall be 3 steps behind you. In those same rooms, with Penfold's duplicate and the curate's witness and Mrs. Pruitt's, telling the truth louder. A Duke of Renfield outspeaks a debtor in want of an estate, cousin, in any company that signifies. You have nothing here. You have land you cannot keep, and a name you have mortgaged, and an afternoon's work that has failed you in every particular. Take up your hat. You will regret. Take up your hat. Still not loud. The room rang with it. There is a chaise at the door that you brought yourself. Get into it. You came to count the spoons. You will leave having touched nothing of ours, not the silver, and not her, and not 1 hour of the time my grandmother has left to spend as she pleases. Go. For a long moment the two black-eyed men held each other across the warm dim room, and the gold afternoon moved an inch along the wall, and the dowager watched them both with the bright, unhurried pleasure of a woman who has played her last game well. Then Crawford took up his hat. The ice in him had nowhere to go. It only thinned to a smile, and the smile to nothing. "Cousin," he said. "Aunt, a small bow, exquisite, empty." His glance crossed Eleanor's once, flat as pond ice, and found no purchase there, and moved on. "Miss Hart, I wish you joy of Comblench. May it be all you have worked for. I wish you free of your debts, Mr. Crawford," Eleanor said, low and even, "and I mean it more kindly than you will ever credit, for I would not have any soul carry what you carry." Goodbye. He had no answer to that, which she saw was the cruelest thing she could have given him, and she had not meant it for cruelty at all, which was crueler still. He went. His boot on the stair grew faint and fainter, and below them at last the great door opened and shut, and after a moment the gravel cried out under wheels, and the sound of him drew away down the drive into the heavy gold silence of the summer afternoon, and did not come again. The dowager let out a long breath, and seemed all at once to grow smaller against the pillows, as a candle settles when the drought has passed. "Well," she said, "that is done. I have wanted to do that for 10 years, and I had to be at my last gasp to find the wind for it. There is a lesson in that, children, though I am too tired to draw it." Her hand sought Eleanor's, and found it, and the ringed fingers were cooler now than they had been. "Eleanor, come close. And you, Alaric, come where I can reach the both of you, for my arms have grown short." They came. Eleanor knelt on the worn place in the carpet that was the size and shape of her own 4 years, and the Duke came round to the other side of the bed and took his grandmother's other hand, and the old woman lay between them in the lavender dimness, and looked from one face to the other, with her clear, sinking lamp of an eye. "I told you it was her turn," she said to him. "I have made it her turn. I have given her the means to want nothing from you, no roof, no bread, no rescue. So now, when you ask her, and you will ask her, there will be only the one reason left in the world for her to say yes." The breath snagged and steadied. Mind you remember that, when she does. It will not be because she had nowhere else to go. I have seen to that. It will be because she chose you, you difficult boy. Out of a whole free life she might have spent any way she liked. There is no dowry on earth worth more than a woman who could leave and stays. "Grandmother." The Duke's voice was not steady. "Do not talk as though. I shall talk as I please. It is nearly the last of my privileges, and I mean to enjoy it." She turned her head to Eleanor, and the imperial sharpness softened all at once into something Eleanor had only seen in her once or twice in 4 years, and never for so long. "Child, I am going to ask you the thing I have no right to ask, and you are going to grant it, because you have never once refused me anything that cost you, and I am a wicked old woman to trade on it at the very end." Take his hand. No, across me. Let me feel it. There Eleanor's hand found the Duke's over the counterpane, over the thin breast that rose and fell with such labour, and his closed round hers, warm and very large, and steady as it had been on the servant's stair when he stilled the restless fingers that now lay quiet in both of theirs. "I do not ask you to promise anything," the dowager murmured. "Promises are for the frightened. I ask only that you let yourself be held for 1 minute by someone who wants nothing of you but the holding. You have done it for me 4 years. You have never once let it be done for you. Do it now. For me. While I can watch. Her eyes were closing. The lamp was guttering low and gold. I should so like to go out of the world having seen Eleanor Hart let someone take the weight of her, just once, before I am holding, Eleanor said. Her face was wet. She let it be wet. There was no one in the dim room to mind, and for once she did not mind herself. I am being held, Your Grace. Look, I am letting it be done. You may watch your fill. Good. The word was barely sound. The ringed hand within their joined ones gave one last small pressure, the grip that had not forgotten how to command, and then forgot it, gently, and was only a hand resting warm between two others. Good. There. Oh, that is better than the roses ever. The laboring breath went out slow and easy, like a tide that has finished its long quarrel with the shore, and it did not trouble itself to come back as a snagging thread, but lay smooth and let go, and the seamed old face, that had been the most admired in 3 counties, that was now only beloved, eased into a stillness with no fear left anywhere in it at all. For a long while, neither of them moved. The afternoon lay gold across the foot of the bed. Below the window the bees still labored in the lavender, and a wood pigeon turned its 3 soft notes over and over. And the world went on being summer, as it does, with no notion of what had just passed quietly out of one shut room on the top floor of a great house. Eleanor's hand was still in the Duke's, over the quiet hand between them, and she found she could not let go of either, and that he was not asking her to. She has slipped her moorings, Eleanor said at last, very low, the words she had learned long ago to use because the plainer ones were more than most rooms could bear. She is past all of it now, the pain, and the pride, and the long afternoons. She went easy, Your Grace. I have seen many go hard. She went as gently as ever I saw a soul go, and she went looking at the thing she most wanted to see. Her voice broke, and she steadied it. She wanted to see you home, and she wanted to see me held. She had both. There are not many who get the last picture they asked for. The Duke's head was bowed over the joined hands. When he lifted it, his black eyes were bright and unspilled, and the muscle moved once in his jaw, and then went still, mastered, as it had on the first afternoon, but he did not take his hand from hers. I came home 18 months too late to know her, he said. 4 years too late to know what you were doing under this roof. I have a great gift, it seems, for arriving after the important things. A long breath. I do not mean to arrive too late for this one. But not now. Not over, not here, and not now. She was right. Promises are for the frightened, and I would not have you say yes to me in a room full of grief, because your kind heart could not bear to add to mine. So I will only sit with you a while, if you will let me, and we will keep her company until the doctor comes, the 2 of us, the way she liked us best, where she could see us both, at once. She said she was too old to enjoy her pleasures one at a time, Eleanor said, and a sound came out of her that was half a sob and half, astonishingly, a laugh, and the Duke's mouth moved into the place a smile would stand. And they sat together in the gold and the lavender quiet, and kept the old Duchess company through the long, bright, slow decline of the afternoon, until the light went amber, and then rose, and then grey, and the doctor's gig at last came grinding up the drive in the cool of the evening, too late for anything but kindness, which is what doctors are mostly for. They buried her on a still grey morning at the end of that week, in the small church where 6 generations of Renfields lay, and the whole county came, Lady Selcombe in unimpeachable black, her eyes busy over the mourners, the curate who had witnessed the settlement and held his tongue, the tenants in their Sunday coats, Mrs. Pruitt with her keys silent and her face stiff against grief. Eleanor stood in plain dark grey, a half-pace behind the family, and a half-pace before the servants, in that no-man's land the house had never decided what to call her, and she felt the county's eyes upon her, weighing, whispering, choosing the story it meant to tell. The Duke of Renfield put an end to that at the church door. He did it as he did all his fiercest things, quietly, without a raised voice, in a way that left no room afterward to pretend it had not happened. As the mourners filed out into the grey churchyard, he stepped back and waited, and took Eleanor's hand upon his arm in full view of Lady Selcombe and the magistrate and 3 dowagers with correspondence, and walked her down the path himself, slow, his head bent courteously to hers, for all the world to see. And he stopped where the talk was thickest, and said, into a lull, clear and even, "You will all have heard my grandmother left Miss Hart independent, a house, and a competence, settled 3 weeks before her last illness, witnessed by Mr. Penfold and the curate, of her own free and stated mind. She did it because Miss Hart gave her 4 years of devotion this family did nothing to deserve. I say it here, before her grave, so that no one need wonder, and so that anyone who chooses to wonder aloud may do it knowing I shall hear of it." It was, the county agreed afterward, very handsomely done, and what could not be whispered down was the plain witnessed fact of the settlement, made before ever the Duke came home, which starved the choicest version of the tale of its only food. A penniless companion raised up by a smitten duke was a story 3 counties could dine upon for a season. A gentlewoman of independent means, provided for by a duchess of sound mind and gratitude for years of faithful care, was merely respectable, and respectability is the one dish gossip cannot abide. Lady Selcombe took her barouche and her beautiful silent daughter back along the Bath road within the fortnight, the talk gone flat in her mouth, and was, by autumn, telling everyone how she had always said there was no creature so deserving as a good, faithful, attached gentlewoman. He did not ask her that week, nor the next. He let the grief settle, and the house grow quiet, and the holland covers come off the rest of the rooms, and he sent Penfold to put Comblench in order, and one warm gold evening near the end of August he found Eleanor, where he had first found her, not in the drawing-room, but below, in the still-room, on her knees on the cool flags, grinding dried chamomile to powder with the pestle that had worn a callus into the heel of her hand. "Mrs. Pruitt told me you would be down here," he said from the doorway. "She told me you have come down every evening since, though there is no one left to dose. She seems to think it a fault in you. I think it the most reasonable thing in the house." Eleanor sat back on her heels. The summer evening came thin and amber through the high north window, finding the dust of dried herbs hanging in the still air, and the room smelled of beeswax and the green bite of bruised chamomile, exactly as it had on the morning he came home. "It is the only room that was ever mine," she said simply. "I come down to be in it. I do not always grind anything. Tonight I did, because my hands wanted a thing to do." She looked at the pestle. "They have wanted a thing to do for a long while now, and there is less and less for them. I do not yet know what a person is, who has spent her life being useful, when there is no longer anyone who needs using up. I am trying to learn it. It is slower than I expected." The Duke came in. He had to bend his head under the low lintel, broad-shouldered in the amber light, and he looked too large for the small green room, and somehow exactly right in it. He did not sit. There was nowhere to sit but the floor and the one stool, and after a moment, gravely, he took the stool, his knees nearly to his chin, a Duke of Renfield folded onto a still-room stool, and Eleanor felt the corner of her mouth pull at the sight of it and let it. "You are absurd," she told him. "You will ruin that coat. I have ruined better coats on worse stools," he said, "and never to such purpose." He turned his hat once in his hands and set it down on the scrubbed deal table and looked at her. "I said I would not ask you in grief, and I would not ask you for need, because my grandmother took the need away on purpose, and I would not ask you for spite, because Crawford is 40 miles off and forgotten. So I have been waiting for a moment that is none of those things. This is it, I think. A quiet evening, and no one frightened, and you with your own house and your own income and your own free choice of any life in England. There is nothing left for you to want from me," He drew a breath. Which means, if you say yes, it can only be because you want me. My grandmother told me to remember that. I find I have remembered nothing else for a month. Eleanor's hands had gone still in her lap, chamomile ghosting her fingers. Her heart struck hard against her stays, and the old trained instinct rose in her. To deflect, to make it light, to manage the moment away before it could ask anything of her, and she felt it rise, and for once she let it go by. You hardly know me, she said, but softly now, not a refusal. A last honest fear laid on the table between them. You came home in July. You have seen me bury the one person who, her voice caught. You have seen me at my work and at my grief, and never once at my ease. I do not know what I am, Your Grace, when I am at ease. I have never had the leisure to find out. You may be asking for a woman who does not exist yet. Then I should like to be there while she finds out, the Duke said. I have a great house full of rooms that smell of nobody, and a still room that smells of you, and I have lately learned that I would rather have the second sort everywhere. I am not asking you to be useful to me, Eleanor. God knows I have men enough to be useful. I am asking you to let me be useful to you, for as many years as we are given, to bring the tray down the back stair, and carry the coals, and learn what you take in your tea, and sit on absurd stools in small green rooms watching you grind herbs for no one. Because watching you is the nearest thing to peace I have found in 27 years. His black eyes held hers, steady and dark and faintly, terribly kind. It is your turn. I have said it before, and meant it less well than I mean it now. Marry me, and spend the rest of your life being the one who is cared for. You will be very bad at it at first. I am prepared to be patient. I am told I do my kindness like cavalry, but I find I can learn to do it slowly, if you will teach me. The way you taught this house, everything else it knows. The amber light moved along the scrub table. Outside, very far, a stable door swung on its unoiled hinge, and a wood pigeon turned its 3 soft notes, and the warm green evening pressed at the high window. Eleanor looked at the man folded onto her still-room stool, with his good coat dusty and his hat on her work table, and his grandmother's eyes gone gentle in the gold, and she felt the whole careful fortress of herself, built drop by drop, over 25 years, upon the single rock of being the one who did not need. Come quietly down, not in ruin, but the way scaffolding comes down when the thing it held up no longer needs holding. I am going to weep, she said, and I should warn you that I am very bad at it, having had so little practice, and I shall not be able to manage it gracefully. Good, said the Duke of Renfield. Be ungraceful. I have watched you manage everything for 4 years. I should like, just once, to watch you not manage at all. Come here and be a great deal of trouble to somebody. And Eleanor Hart, who had folded everything small and kept it dry and never quite spent it, rose from the cool flags of the only room that had ever been hers, and crossed it, and let herself be gathered in against the broad dusty warmth of him, and put her face into the curve of his neck, where the road dust had long since been brushed away, and only the warmth was left, and wept, ungracefully, helplessly, 4 years and 25 of it at once, while his hand came up to cradle the back of her head as carefully as she had once cradled an old woman's, and held the whole weight of her without once asking her to be lighter. And when at last the storm had passed through her and left her quiet, she lifted her face, and found his quite undone, and said, against his mouth, the plainest true thing she owned. Yes, she said. Yes, for you. And for no other reason in the world. She would be insufferable about it. I wish she were here to be insufferable. She is being insufferable somewhere, the Duke said, unsteadily. I have no doubt of it whatsoever. And he kissed her, there in the amber light with the chamomile dust between them and the beeswax in the air, gently and not gently, while the long summer evening went gold and then rose and then soft grey beyond the high north window, and the great house above them, for the first time in longer than anyone could remember, settled toward its night with nothing in it that needed managing at all. They were married quietly in October, in the small church where the dowager lay, with the leaves coming down red and gold across the stones, and the first wood smoke sharp in the cold, bright air. And if the county had hoped for a great Renfield wedding to talk of, it was disappointed, for the new Duchess would have only the tenants and the household, and a great quantity of the late dowager's roses, which she had ordered cut back hard in September against everyone's advice, and which had answered, improbably, with a second flush of late blooms, blowsy and gross and glorious, exactly as the old woman had loved them. It is, the people of Renfield will tell you, a settled and a happy house now, which is a duller thing to gossip about, and a far better thing to live near. The Duke is at home the year round, and has mended the 2 bad harvests, not with a great marriage, but with hard attention, and a wife who can read a ledger as readily as a sick-room. The new Duchess keeps her still-room still, and is down in it most evenings, and the village comes to her door now, not for charity, but for her chamomile and her goose-grease salve and her steady hands, and goes away the better for all 3. There is a worn place in the carpet of the small parlour. Beside a chair no one is allowed to move, exactly the size and shape of where a woman used to kneel. And on the dressing table of the best bedroom there is a rosewood writing box, kept locked, that smells of dried violets, and inside it, folded in green ribbon, a paper that a clever, wicked, loving old woman signed 3 weeks before the end, so that a girl who had spent her whole life caring for others might at the last be free. Free to stay, free to go, free to be loved on no terms but her own choosing. She chose to stay. She chose to be loved. And on the warm gold evenings of the following summer, when the box hedge bakes, and the lavender hums with bees, and the stable door still swings on the hinge no one will ever oil, you may find the Duke of Renfield folded too large onto a still-room stool, ruining a good coat, watching his Duchess grind chamomile for the sheer settled pleasure of having her hands full and her heart fuller, and if you listen, under the chime of stone on stone, you will hear her laughing at him, easily, the way a woman laughs who has finally, after a long apprenticeship, learned how it is done. Thank you for sitting by the fire with me tonight, and for staying all the way to the end of Eleanor's story. If you have ever been the one who carried everyone else, the steady hands at the edge of other people's storms, then perhaps, like her, it is quietly your turn now too. Tell me in the comments which moment warmed you most: the luncheon tray on the back stair, the green ribboned paper, or the Duke folded onto that absurd little stool. And if this story kept you company, do subscribe and ring the bell so you will be here by the fire again tomorrow night, when there will be another tale waiting, and another candle lit, and a place kept warm for you. Until then, sleep gently, and be well.